Do you guys know that Syria is home to some of the oldest cities in the world that have been continuously inhabited for over 4,000 years? Or that Syria has been at the center of some of the most significant civilizations in human history, like the Assyrians and Babylonians? Well, if you didn't know these things, I'm here to share some of Syria's history, some facts regarding its chemical weapons program, and the rise and fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime. And I'll be discussing this while I do my makeup. Now, Syria has been the topic of discussion for several weeks now, but Syria has always had a long and rich history, as it is one of the world's oldest and continuously populated regions in the world. Archaeological evidence shows that Syria was part of the Fertile Crescent, which is considered the birthplace of agriculture and the first human settlements. Aleppo, a Syrian city, is almost as old as Damascus, which is another Syrian city, and it has been a major hub for trade and culture for many years. Aleppo's significance dates back to at least 1800 BCE, when it was part of the Amorite kingdom, and later it became a stop on the Silk Road connecting Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. At its height, Aleppo was one of the wealthiest cities in the world, known for its bustling markets and cultural diversity. What are the timeline of events that led Syria into being what it is today? In the 20th century, Syria became a focal point for global politics. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire, which controlled Syria for centuries, collapsed, and Syria went under control of the French Mandate. But this period was marked by resistance from the Syrians who wanted independence, and Syria finally gained its independence from France in 1946, but the years that followed that were far from peaceful. Between 1946 and 1970, Syria experienced over 20 coups and political crises, making it one of the most unstable countries in the region. Now, this chaos ended when Bashar al-Assad's father, Hafez al-Assad, seized power in a bloodless coup in 1970. Now let's talk about Bashar al-Assad. Did you guys know that Bashar al-Assad was not originally meant to be Syria's president? Bashar's older brother, Bashar al-Assad, was being groomed to take over after their father, but he died in a car accident. At that time, Bashar was studying ophthalmology and he had no intentions of joining politics, but after his brother's death, he was soon sent to Syria to take over the regime. When Bashar became president in 2000, there was hope that he would modernize Syria, but his presidency is known for its corruption, repression, and one of the deadliest modern conflicts in history, the Syrian Civil War. The Syrian Civil War began in 2011 during the Arab Spring, when there were uprisings in the Middle East and North Africa. In Syria, people demanded reforms, more freedom, and an end to the decades-long Assad regime. Now, instead of listening to the people, Assad's regime responded with violent crackdowns. Protesters were arrested, tortured, and killed, sparking a nationwide uprising that ended in a bloody civil war. The Syrian Civil War has claimed over 500,000 lives and displaced more than 13 million people, making it one of the worst humanitarian crises in modern history. Now, another thing you may not know is that the Syrian government has been accused of using chemical weapons against its citizens during the Civil War, despite the international ban on these weapons. Do you guys know that Syria had one of the largest chemical weapon stockpiles in the world before its civil war? Now, Syria's chemical weapons program started under Hafez al-Assad, which built up the arsenal to deter Israel, and the program received assistance from foreign countries, including the Soviet Union. Now, by the time the civil war started, the Syrian war stockpiled chemical weapons like mustard gas, chlorine, and sarin gas, and one of the deadliest chemical attacks occurred in Ghouta in 2013, when the Assad regime was accused of using chemical weapons against a rebel-held suburb near Damascus. Over 1,400 people were killed in this attack, including hundreds of children. Now, this attack sparked international outrage, leading to the UN to broker a deal to stop Syria from having these weapons. And in 2013, Syria agreed to join the Chemical Weapons Convention and handed over most of its arsenal to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. But despite this, reports revealed that the Syrian government still used chemical weapons against its citizens, including chlorine gas, which is harder to detect and regulate. Now, if you want to read more about this, as always, all sources in the comments. Now, something most people don't realize was that the Syrian Civil War was not just a domestic fight, but it was also a proxy war that involved multiple global powers. Russia and Iran have been strong political allies to Bashar al-Assad, providing him security and weapons, along with funding to keep him in power. And it actually turns out that Russia's intervention in Syria was its first major military operation outside of its border after the Cold War. In 2015, Russia launched airstrikes on Syria, claiming to be targeting ISIS, but many reports suggest that the airstrikes targeted opposition-held areas. On the other hand, countries like the United States, Turkey, and some Gulf states have supported various opposition groups, creating a complex web of rivalries and alliances that have prolonged the war. Now let's rewind and look at Syria's cultural history. Syria is one of the most ethnically and culturally diverse countries in the Middle East. The country is home to Arabs, Assyrians, Armenians, Kurds, and other ethnic groups, along with religious communities like Sunni Muslims, Druze, Alawites, and Christians. The diversity has been both a source of strength and tension during the Civil War, and these ethnic and sectarian divides have been exploited by several different factions. So you might be asking, where does Syria go from here? Now, the civil war in Syria has definitely slowed down, but the country is far from stable, especially now after the fall of the Assad family's 50-year regime. The Syrian economy right now is in ruins, with over 90% of its population living in poverty, and millions of refugees remain in exile, and rebuilding the country will likely take decades. However, there is hope that with Assad gone, refugees can return to Syria, and the new power that is likely to rise up will help rebuild the country. Now, despite its modern struggles, Syria is a country that is rich with a history of surviving the fall of several empires and wars, and it has already endured countless challenges. And what your thoughts are on Syria's history, the chemical weapons program, and what you predict will happen after the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I left all sources in the comments.